My guest today is Bette Chen. Bette is the co-founder of Acala, the DeFi hub of Polkadot. And Acala is an Ethereum compatible platform for financial applications to use smart contracts or built-in protocols with out-of-the-box cross-chain capabilities. Very exciting stuff. Welcome to the show, Bette.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Andy.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Just before we dive into Polkadot and Acala and the wonderful world of DeFi, I'd love it if you could introduce yourself and just give us a bit of your background and your personal blockchain story.
Absolutely. So I actually came to New Zealand about 20 years ago as a student. And then I graduated from University of Auckland in a engineering degree, specialized in software. So that was my early career as an engineer, developer. But soon enough, I got myself into the darker side of the whole thing. I got into product management, and then more focused on product development, product design later in my career. I've also got a degree from Otago, as well as the Duke University, studying MBA. So kind of also helping out in terms of operations and many other aspects in my later entrepreneurial sort of career. So I've always been working in tech. And about, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, I stumbled across Bitcoin. And I started reading about everything in Bitcoin, the white paper. With an engineering background or a software development background, I got very fascinated about the technology side of things, and then got to a point where even coded a blockchain using JavaScript just to try to understand every single bit of it, and couldn't get out. I think many people are like me. Is once you are in the rabbit hole, you dig deeper and deeper, and eventually you never come out. So was very lucky that a few years back I got an opportunity to actually transition my career from now we call Web 2 world or a traditional tech world into the crypto or the Web 3 technology world to work full time as a product manager. And after that, kind of in the arena, in the field, and meeting like-minded people, and that's also where I met my co-founders of Acala, also in New Zealand, right? Met very cool technical geniuses, and also met entrepreneurs, and then that's how we actually started out the startup. And then, of course, very soon after that, because the field that we are in has no border. New Zealand is very far away from everywhere else, but luckily in blockchain, it connects everyone together. So the early Acala team is actually a very international team. So we have fellows from Shanghai, and also from Europe, that we collaborate together. And today, of course, it expanded to North America, South America, Singapore. So it's a very diverse and decentralized team that working together on this very exciting journey. So yeah.
Fantastic, Bette. And look, not to make this too New Zealand centric, but it is kind of interesting because, you're based in New Zealand. You've studied here and lived here for a long time, and I think most listeners will know that Brave New Coin is based in New Zealand as well. So, this is the first time we've met. We don't know each other, but it's cool to connect and talk to someone else who is in New Zealand and working in blockchain and doing cool stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you may not know us, but I know Brave New Coin because you guys are one of the pioneers, actually. Not in New Zealand, actually in the world. You guys are one of the pioneers that trying to, I guess, one is progress the field further, educate more people. You guys done tremendous work, and have a lot of respect in you guys. And then, I think it's amazing that for people who work in an emerging technology field, people who you listen to, who you look up to, at one point your path is going to cross, and then you're going to do things together. You're going to collaborate and innovate and create new stuff together. I think this is what happened now, right?
Fantastic stuff. I couldn't have said it better. That is brilliant. All right. Well, let's get into this, Bette. So, just before we talk about Acala, I think, the context here, it would be good to just understand a little bit about Polkadot and DeFi and how that ecosystem works. So maybe just lay out a little bit of, how you understand the Polkadot ecosystem, and then we'll talk about Acala.
Yeah, absolutely. Since I'm a builder in the field, so I'll speak from, as a technology creator, how I see the field progressing, right? So I think for your audience, for the Brief New Coin audience, most of the folks are already educated about Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I'll use analogy to say where we've been and where we are at, right? So I think for Bitcoin, very fundamentally, it is a ledger, right? So it does one thing really well. It stores value and it transacts value between peer to peer. That's what it does. It's a ledger. And it's almost like the calculator that we have. It performs certain functions. And then the next progression beyond Bitcoin is Ethereum. But ultimately, at a very fundamental level, Ethereum is a ledger plus a virtual machine or Ethereum virtual machine. That's it. The ledger is almost exactly the same as Bitcoin, but on top of that, you attach a computer to the ledger. And then, of course, that opens up the Pandora box. Once you've got computers, you've got a whole bunch of creators that can write programs that can do certain things. For example, you can program certain parts of the banking system, lending and borrowing on top of Ethereum, and you can program, exchanges on decentralized exchanges on top of Ethereum, and all sorts of other things that you can think of or you haven't thought of already. So that's what happens on Ethereum, is a ledger plus a computer. But using an analogy, Ethereum is more like a mainframe computer, because it's one computer, literally one computer, world computer, that used by everyone in the world. And you can imagine, as this field progresses and it gets popular, your mainframe computer is not going to be able to hold up to the load of everyone accessing it. This is exactly what happened last year when there's a lot of DeFi financial activities happening on Ethereum, and the transaction costs shoot up to the sky, and then deploying new applications, like new innovations, become also very expensive. But then you pause to think, what happened next after mainframe? I think if you look back, we realize, that the history might repeat again. It's probably already repeating. Is after mainframe, we have server computers, and also very quickly beyond server, we go into the cloud era, right? Because all of those abstractions, it abstracts away all the hardware or the smaller servers that started to build out in the next generation of the so-called, now we call Web 2 technology. And those are what powers, Facebook, Uber, all the familiar applications that we know today. And we are seeing that happening for blockchain as well. So I think right now we're seeing a new generation of internet of blockchains that are start to come out and going live this year. So it's going to be very exciting things to see what applications come out of those, right? Because previously, when you have dial-ups, when you don't have cloud computing, it's very hard to see how Netflix, how Uber can actually, I think people already have those ideas, but without the technology breakthrough, it's very hard to get to the user experience that we want. And this is a very good leeway into the third generation of blockchain, which is Internet of Blockchains or cloud era. And this is where Polkadot actually plays a role in progressing the technology to that direction. So Polkadot is basically, using an analogy, it's basically the Internet protocol or TCP/IP for the next generation of blockchain that are interconnected and also interoperable. And you can think about Polkadot as, because previously Bitcoin is a ledger, and Ethereum is a ledger plus a virtual machine, a computer, and then Polkadot offers is basically a ledger or trust as a service. So anyone who connects to it connects to the cloud. Then you can access its trust and ledger, and this is what it empowers. So, for example, Acala is one of the blockchains connects to Polkadot. Instead of every blockchain needs to bootstrap its trust, because that's basically what Bitcoin has its defense for its security, and also how it actually maintains its trustless nature for the people using it. And Polkadot is using proof of stake, right? But the proof of stake is shareable. It's basically people can access it via a cloud-like services. And then for a financial focused blockchain like Acala, we basically can tap into Polkadot's trust as a service. So from day one, when we launch, we already have a 40 billion worth of proof of stake security network without bootstrapping that up ourselves. And that is the power of the next generation of blockchain, where a lot of this very hard stuff like peer-to-peer communication, ensuring security, consensus, a trust layer, and also managing the ledger. These are all abstracted away underneath this cloud-like infrastructure. And then we, as builders for the next generation blockchain, we can focus on our specialized domain. And this is like where Acala stands as a domain-specific blockchain, if you like, focus purely on finance. So I'll stop there, and I think you might have other questions, and we can delve into it a bit further later on as well.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff, Bette. So, all right, well let's switch to Acala then. I'd love to hear the origin story of Acala. So you've kind of laid out, a little bit of the vision there for Polkadot, and I guess that's why you're excited by the possibilities that Polkadot can potentially unlock. So, talk us through the origin story for Acala, and what is the problem that you guys are trying to solve, and why is it that Polkadot is the ecosystem that you've decided to build on?
Yeah, sure. So I think all the co-founders at Acala share one vision. Is we see the Web3 technology, basically the decentralized blockchain technology, is going to revolutionize the whole internet for a number of reasons. We've got to a stage where internet is fairly centralized. All the resources, information, data are concentrated on a fair handful of organizations. However, not because they are intrinsically evil, but because how the internet is set up, those resources are very hard for them to actually, or they don't have the right incentive, if you like, to actually share those resources to people who actually make those organizations successful. For example, the users who provide those data, and then users who contributed certain parts of their operations. For example, if you are Uber, the biggest contributor in that equation is actually the passenger as well as the driver, right? But those two mostly got left out of the entire economic or incentive environment for the organization who create this platform, right? So they basically creating a huge intermediary, concentrating resources, but excluding people who actually providing and delivering value. And this is just one example, but you can use that to for any other big tech that we currently have today. So this is one motivation why Web3 can flip this model around, because the decentralized application that requires you have a very direct incentive model towards people who are participating. So you give the power back to the individuals who actually make your organization or make your platform successful. So that's one aspect. So every one of us are a true believer in where this is going. Of course, the first application is Bitcoin, which is financial related, because that is the fundamental fabric of how the entire society get glued together. And Bitcoin kind of delivers that at an application level to very tangible how that is possible, right? And then the second thing is Bitcoin, brings us real ownership. I think prior to that, no one actually really owned anything. Mostly what we own at the best is IOUs. And until Bitcoin comes along, it really opens people's mindset to see, really you can actually own something without being beholden to intermediaries, right? Not saying that intermediaries are not good or evil, but it's more of like, how can we evolve from the current very expensive trust-based system, very inefficient system. How can we evolve that to a more transparent, more efficient, and also more democratized system, so everyone have more access and more freedom, I guess, ultimately at the end of the day. So those are fundamental motivators for all of us to get together, very excited to see, what can we do to actually contribute to the field. And then we pick finance because out of everything, we think finance will be the first breakthrough for this technology to actually impact everyday life, to actually transform certain industries early first versus all the other industries. So we that's why we committed our whole effort in terms of transforming finance. Later on, this field is only very, very tiny in terms of where it's going to go. So we're going to focus on finance first, and then later on, I think there's tremendous opportunity for everyone on any other industry that's going to be revolutionized. So that's kind of how we started and why we actually chose finance as the arena to dedicate our career and life to, for now at least.
Fantastic. And so, I'd love you just to give us some specific use cases and examples of what you mean by finance. And I guess what you mean really, Betty, is decentralized finance. So, you guys are building out the typical DeFi, primitives, right? And I think you've got like a multi-collateralized stablecoin. There's an AMM DEX you guys are building. So this is all part of the Acala suite of applications, right?
Yeah. So I think one premise that we have there is, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin is going to be a reserve asset for, as an important reserve asset in the future of the global economy. And we're already seeing that happening, right? So for example, a number of the public listed company, Fortune 500 companies like MicroStrategy, like Tesla, like Square, they already put Bitcoin on their balance sheet, on their treasury as a reserve against or a hedge against inflation, right? So they've done their homework. I think some of them actually started just right after COVID, MicroStrategy, to investigate, what other assets that are comparable. I think they looked at gold, look at silver, look at some other assets. Bitcoin is only one of them that they looked at, but eventually they chose Bitcoin as, I guess, the new digital gold or the new global reserve to achieve their treasury purposes, which is to preserve their wealth and also continue the product, development and for their company. Right? So this is one sign. And then the other sign that you can see is more institutions are already recognizing Bitcoin as a reserve. So this starts from ARK Invest and also Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, that more institutional investors are going into it. And I think there's also a New Zealand Kiwi Saver Fund also got exposure into Bitcoin, although not directly the Bitcoin raw asset, but I think it's a trust version of it.
Yeah, it was through Galaxy Digital, I believe. Mike Novogratz, and I think the fund, the New Zealand Super Fund, is I can't remember the name. It might be NZ Funds or something like that. But you're exactly
New
right.
Zealand Fund Management.
That's it. Yeah, the first one to get some Bitcoin exposure, and incredible to see. And they actually were one of the best performing, New Zealand superannuation or KiwiSaver funds because of that Bitcoin exposure, right?
Yeah. So, but of course, they're only the first ones
Yes.
to do this, right? And then you will see the movement is also gonna be very exponential because companies like MicroStrategy, like Tesla, not only they done this for their own corporation, they have open source the entire procedure. Including the financial part of it, regulatory part of it, accounting part of it, to the whole world, right? So basically, what you're expecting is in the next, 12 months, many of those public listed companies and also, numerous not listed companies is going to follow suit, because this is like how technology becomes can evolve very quickly, and innovating cross borders, right? Is this open source sort of movement. This is also happening beyond the technology world now into the business world, right? So this is the whole ethos of Bitcoin open source technology, and they're doing that for the business world. So I think this is going to accelerate the development of this very quickly. And if that premise, you set that premise as the fundamental sort of like truth, then you're gonna need financial instruments on top of that to actually power sort of the finance activities built on top of that. So, for example, today, as Kiwi, we're very passionate about properties, right? And then in the bank, you actually go and put your property as kind of like a collateral, right? And then you can get revolving credit out of your property. What would you use that for? You can renovate our house, right? Or maybe put up a new fence so that the house is better maintained and maybe increase value. So it's better for the future. So this is a very natural way for people to look after their assets and also increase value over time, right? And this also happens in the financial, decentralized financial world, and using Bitcoin as that reserve asset, like the property that we have, right? So what Acala offers is like a decentralized bank. You can actually, without any intermediary, you can put your Bitcoin as collateral, and then out of the Bitcoin that you collateralized, you can borrow dollars against it. And then for the dollars you borrow, there's a number of things that you can do, obviously. These days, there's still a lot of traders and people trying to extract value out of the base currency, so they can borrow dollar and they can trade against it, or they can actually purchase more Bitcoin. So you kind of have a leverage on top of Bitcoin, or you can actually pay for some services and a certain type of activities that your business is based on. And on top of that, you can also use the dollar you borrow to participate in other decentralized finance activity, for example, proof of stake, right? Because Bitcoin is kind of like a reserve currency. It doesn't actually do anything other than a preserved value, but you can extract dollar denominated value out of it to participate in other yield generation activities and events out of it. I think this is only one sort of aspect of what we do. And then another thing is also collateralizing real world assets. So we're working with a project called Centrifuge. So they tokenize real world invoices and accounts receivable, right? And what do they do? People do that because they need working capital. So they can actually tokenize that asset, put it on Acala, and then you can actually borrow dollars out of it. And those dollars can go off-ramp back into the real world and actually pay for wages and things like that. So that makes a really good cycle of how you can actually put oil back into the economy through the decentralized platform. But of course, all of this stuff is very early stage. And there's probably only 10 million, 20 million dollar worth of assets are floating right now for the real world assets. For the decentralized finance asset, there's certainly now up to hundreds of billions of dollars. So things are just start getting more people involved in the field, and more, I guess, activities going on top of that. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and look, Betty, you talk about Bitcoin as being, I guess, this kind of pristine reserve asset, right? And that's what Bitcoin is. And I guess the ethos of the Bitcoin community and the Bitcoin core developers is to move extremely slowly and be extremely conservative. And the number one goal is to kind of preserve Bitcoin's decentralized properties and make it resistant to attack and censorship resistant, all that good stuff. Whereas the cool thing about DeFi and it's kind of opposite is not so much move fast and break things, but do experimental cool stuff, because we're building out the future of finance. And I think you guys are doing that with something called, am I saying this right? Is it Karura or Kasuma?
Yeah, Karura.
Karura, which is kind of your, I don't know, it's the kind of, is it the experimental breeding ground of where it's the bleeding edge of technology and what is possible at DeFi, right?
Yeah, so this was to mention a bit of context. So, Polkadot is, basically perceived as a bank grade security sort of internet of blockchains. And then a lot of the things that we are doing is very hard to test in a normal software testing environment without value, without real incentives to break things. You can't test. So initially, Polkadot set up a canary network called Kusama, where it's probably 1/100th of the value of Polkadot, but it still has intrinsic value in the network. So we can test things like governance, we can test the economics consensus to see how things goes. But of course, over time, it's evolved from a pure testing network. It's kind of got its own vibe, community, and also real applications. So for example, there's quite a NFT creative community now on Kusama because it is an environment that's more open, that invites a lot of changes and new ideas without worrying about breaking the banking grid of internet that much. So that's how the community evolved. And as Acala, so we are the financial infrastructure, if you like, for the Web3 future. So then for us, we will have to serve. Doesn't matter, how vibrant the community or how bank grid community as a financial instrument. Like for example, we offer stable currency so people can trade and transact. We offer exchanges, so there's kind of like foreign exchanges or doing a lot of trading. We offer all of this facilities, so we have to be on both network to serve them. So the Karura network we have is will be launched on Kusama to serve that community. So an interesting thing is it's a little bit like an organization opening branches in different country. But this time it's probably not a country, probably on a different universe. On the Kusama universe, there's a lot of creative things happening. So for example, we could try new products like, some of the creative arts. We can tokenize that into collaterals, right? And then we can use those collateral to borrow against it, and then create a secondary sort of financial market on top of it, which will be a lot more, I guess, progressive and fun and interesting versus what is going to be offered on Polkadot and Acala as the more bank grade and more integrate into maybe fintech and other applications. So the two are very, very interesting, certainly.
Got it. Well, look, just to finish off this part of the podcast, Betty, like I saw you sent a recent tweet and you said something like, the future is #HiFi. And you said, it's a hybrid of CeFi and DeFi. I thought that's a really good way of putting it. So yeah, just quickly, give us the vision. Why is the future HiFi? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I'm sure, like, a lot of your audience are very familiar with, DeFi. But I think you will admit that a lot of the DeFi applications, my mom and dad would never be able to understand or even get closer to using it, right? I think be really realistic about that.
Completely agree. Yes.
And that's usually how I measure whether the stuff that I built is useful or not. Is everyday people are we gonna touch their lives, or are we just living in our own bubble, trying to make things sound innovative? So I think one of the approach to close that gap is through collaboration. So I don't think anyone is able to do vertical integration today to cover everything that you're able to do. I think the future is going to be the DeFi, innovators is going to provide the financial backbone and the infrastructure, just like the banking system today. You don't see them, but you're using, the rails every day. Use Swift every day, but you don't see them. You don't touch them. But the last mile of the customer experience is provided by the local, the folks in the right jurisdiction to serve those customers. So, for example, a debit card or Visa card provider, they comply with the local regulations and also compliance, but they can actually serve millions of users at their end of the pipe, right? However, for them to say provide a 5% yield or interest today is almost too impossible, right? Because the bank is getting like a 0.5% or 1% of interest rate. But what if they can actually connect into the DeFi infrastructure and be able to offer a stable return for all of the end users? I think my mom and dad, without knowing exactly what I do, they will still be happy to talk to a local bank or the Visa debit card issuer to put their savings in that card in a safe, transparent way. And they are enjoying the benefits of the open finance that we are providing. So that's only one very specific example, but you can now open your mindset to think all the decentralized finance innovations that we are doing, from trading, from various different type of yield generation, insurance protocols, also privacy protocols that we're integrating with. Those are all at the backbone of the future of finance. But at the end of the day, they are all connected up to many of the Web2 companies, fintech companies, and even banking systems. And they will be offering a specific type of product, whether it's a savings account, whether it's whatever type of instrument that they want to offer to their customers through the means that we're very familiar, whether it's on your app, or on a mobile app, or through a debit card, or just a normal bank account that you can access all of those financial sort of freedom, if you like, to everyday people. So I think HiFi, or the hybrid of DeFi and CeFi, or the hybrid of Web2 and Web3 is where we are gonna see a lot more activities and explosion and touch everybody's lives very soon. So.
Fantastic stuff. I love it, Bette. All right, the future is HiFi indeed. All right, let's go to a very quick break, and then we will come back and we will finish off with the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. All right, and look, we are back, and I'm with Bette Chen. Bette is the co-founder of Acala. And Bette, you may or may not know, but I like to finish each crypto conversation podcast with a quick round of rapid fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Now, you are a fantastic talker, so just remember, these are hot takes. I want quick fire, quick answers.
Okay.
All right, let's roll. Bette, where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
Multi-chain.
Of course.
It's the future.
Yes. All right. Well, Bette, what would you say is your firmest conviction, a crypto opinion?
I think Bitcoin is going to be the future reserve currency, and the future is going to be multi-chain. And also the future will be specialized blockchains that are connected together to serve the end customer. And also the future is HiFi, hybrid DeFi and CeFi.
Yes, I love it. All right. Bette, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So, whatever you like here, blockchain, DeFi, Bitcoin, Acala, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
I think in 10 years' time, everyone's going to use the services that we provide, but without knowing we are actually there.
Yeah, that is just such a simple but elegant way of explaining it. I think that's exactly right. I like that a lot. All right. William Gibson, famous sci-fi author, you will know this quote. He said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now that most people aren't really aware of?
So in the last 2 years, we are already enjoying a very transparent 10% interest rate on the blockchain using decentralized finance protocol. We know exactly what the risk, how the code is coded. Basically, all the banking rules are programmed on the blockchain. But that's only accessible to a very small number of people. So the future is already here. But of course, the best way to predict future is to jump into it and then build a future that you want. And that's exactly why we started Acala and then wanted to make it more accessible to everybody, I guess.
Fantastic. Okay, well, let's stick with the future, but let's zoom out even more. Let's get a little bit weird. Betty, what do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see utopia or dystopia?
I think you can see increasingly we're getting more virtual and less material. And that's to do with, I think information already got us there, but we probably never expect our money is going to go there, all our properties and values. And soon enough, our consciousness will probably also be virtual. And I think when we get to that stage, it's kind of like a scary, kind of speculation. It's going to make us enlightened or break us to destroy the civilization. And everyone here is actually making a conscious choice what your future wants to be, and then you make that responsible action to it, rather than wait and react to what the future brings to you. And that's exactly why we become entrepreneur. I used to work for companies, and that's exactly why we become entrepreneur and trying to be active in creating that future we want, rather than just wait for it to end in a way that we don't want it to be. So yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I love it, Betty. All right, let's close this out. Let's finish this off. Again, like future sci-fi. Betty, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, show, or universe?
I guess Star Trek, and then also borderline Star Wars. They're very different. One is more focused on tech. The other is more, I guess, philosophical and political. I do think we need both.
Yeah, I think we need both too. We need the force to be balanced, and yeah, you can't get two better sci-fi universes to balance it out than Star Trek or Star Wars. So, yep, happy with that, Betty. All right, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun. Close it out. There's nothing else really to say except to hand the microphone back to you and give us the final pitch on Acala. Where can people go to find out more about what you guys are building, and where can they find you on your various platforms?
Yeah, sure. So you can get to our website, acala.network, and also try out our app, apps.acala.network, and also follow us on Twitter, Acala Network. So yeah.
Fantastic. All the best, Betty. This has been fantastic. We'll do this again sometime. But in the meantime, best of luck with what you guys are building, and I hope it goes great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, Andy. It's been great fun.
All right, there you go. That was Bette Chen from Acala. And how good was she? Very, very passionate and great to connect with another person building blockchain solutions here in Auckland. So yeah, that was cool. That was cool. Hope you did enjoy that. Please do remember, subscribe to the Crypto Conversation on whatever podcast app you are using, or here on YouTube. But that is us for today. Hope you enjoyed it. See you real soon. See you next time. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin. See ya.